I wanted to, after the Myers-Briggs thing, I wanted to get a little bit more into some of this like introvert extrovert stuff because
Sure.
I think because it is interesting. Again, just I think the two of us, when I say opposed, I don't mean we're opponents. I just mean like we're very diametrically opposed in terms of who we
Hmm.
are as people. Um, and even I'm thinking about like just there's probably both introverts and extroverts that are going to watch this channel, and it's a matter of trying to trying to help like the two difference understand the other.
Okay.
Because I think especially even like these last 2 weeks in Miami, like actually rooming with you has been different from just being your friend, right? Because obviously we're living together, we're cohabitating. um, so I know, I've lived with people basically my entire adult life because I had two girlfriends that I lived with. Then I had a roommate after my ex. Then for the last 12 months, I've been living by myself. But that's the first time I've lived truly by myself in 7 years.
Yeah.
So, so the idea of having a roommate for the next couple of weeks, it was like, oh, like I'm gonna have my bud, and we're gonna be able to talk, and we're gonna chat, we're gonna be
Yeah.
hanging out, doing all this stuff. Um, but like for you, like did you have that same sort of thought process, or what, or were you more like as an introvert who's lived by himself for a while, did you sort of have like a different idea of like I wonder what this is going to be like?
Yeah. So, yeah, this is my first time technically living with a roommate in like 5 years.
Right.
So I've lived alone for the past 5 years. But prior to that, I always had at least three roommates.
Hmm.
So all through college, and then yeah, for a couple years after college. So I went from one extreme to the other. And I'd say with roommates, I like roommates overall, but there's little things and I don't know if this is an introverted thing. I think this is just more just like a lifestyle thing where it's like there's always one roommate who's a slob, and just like the stress of I cleaned the dishes last week and now they're dirty. None of these dishes are mine. Do I clean them again? If I do, will this guy who I know all these dishes are his, will he even notice?
Hmm.
Things like that. Whereas like when you live alone, it's the dishes are dirty. These are all my dishes. I just clean. I don't think about who the responsibility side of it. It's just like everything is you. So you just you skip that first thought process and then you just go right to dishes need to be cleaned.
Yeah.
And the positive of that is if I spend a Sunday and I'm going to clean every inch of my apartment on Wednesday, it's like, it's still clean. Whereas like with the roommates, it's always like, okay, will they notice? Will they, now that it's clean, will they keep it clean? And at least in my tenure with roommates, there's always at least one who is dirty, and yeah, that caused. If I went back to roommates, I think one roommate with someone who was very similar to me, lifestyle wise,
Hmm.
would be perfect. But again, that's a gamble because if we go back to the pandemic, if you had a roommate who you didn't get along with, or let's say was super dirty while you're super clean, that would have been a nightmare. And I would take being alone in my clean apartment over that any day.
Yeah, I think, and again, now that I live alone, like I do feel like I get lonely sometimes,
Yeah.
which I don't know. Again, do you ever feel like you're lonely in your apartment, or is it?
Yeah, I mean the big when I first moved in a one bedroom by myself like 5 years ago, the first thing I noticed was if I came home from work on a Friday and like I didn't make plans, that I would it's like, oh, I'm just like in my apartment alone on a Friday.
Yeah,
Whereas when you have roommates, there's always those days where you come home after like a busy week of work, and
and your plans are made for you
yeah,
basically.
like your friend has some buddies over, and you're like, oh, we're gonna grab dinner here and go to this bar, and you're like, oh, I don't even have to think about plans. Like have already been made.
And I get, and I think this is probably where it gets to be a little bit different for me and you because like if I come home by myself on a Friday night and I feel like going out and doing something, like I'm the guy who will just like reach out and be like, "What are you doing tonight, guys?" Like
Yeah.
whereas are you, and again, I'm not necessarily tying all of this stuff to specifically just your introversion, but do you feel like you're less likely to try to like impose on somebody just because you're like, I'm just not the guy who's like going to pursue that kind of thing? Or is it more that you're like, no, like I'm kind of indifferent to going out or just being by myself because that's just who I am. I'm very comfortable just being quiet.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the day. Like some days, I don't want to do anything, so it's nice. It's like a busy week of work, and I just want to like chill out for a night.
And do you feel like it's because for me, even if I do feel like I want to chill, if someone invites me to go do something, I do feel like a big pull to do that. Are you a little bit more decisive in like,
It
no, I
depends.
just
It depends what they're doing. If I'm actually like wiped out, I have no problem saying like, nah, I'm wiped out.
I struggle with that.
But if it's like, let's say I didn't do anything the weekend before and I'm wiped out, but you know, a bunch of friends are doing something and they just invited me, then yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the scenario, but I mean, I'll reach out to people, but it's I think when it comes to imposing, it's like, hey, you have any plans tonight? Yeah, I'm like going out to dinner with my girlfriend, then we're gonna meet up with like one of her friends.
Yeah.
Like I would never be like, oh, cool, like
You
can I
want to you want
come?
to invite me to meet that girl? Like
Yeah, I would never impose beyond that.
yeah, I definitely would. Like,
Yeah,
and again, like maybe it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's just Dan being Dan. Like, where like, oh, of course Dan wants to hang out because like Dan wants to hang out with everybody. So maybe it's like a precedent got set that made me comfortable. But I have, again, we throw the term around shameless with me all the time. Like I everything I do is with positive intent. If people see it differently, that's on them and they can let me know and I'm more than happy to be like, oh, I didn't mean it like that, I promise. But it's not even like a permission versus forgiveness thing. It's like, no, I'm not asking so that I can come out and get laid. I'm asking so I can come out and see you because I don't have anybody to hang out with and I'd love to hang out with you if you're available.
yeah.
And I feel like that maybe that even ties back into some of the stuff you were talking about with like the dirty roommate because for me, I've never had an issue. And again, it's not like I'm looking to confront. It's more just like in passing, or just when I come home, like I can like make a joke, and I can sort of just like I'm not going to come at you and be like, okay, listen, I did the dishes last week. You need to do them this week. Like it was never like that. It was more just like yo, I saw some dishes in the sink, probably the same ones I did last week, huh? Like, and I'll laugh, and I might even go do them again, but it's more just like dropping that little jeer onto one of my buddies. And again, I'm comfortable just sort of like reaching out and poking, and even if they come back at me, I can be like, dude, I was kind of joking with you, but I did do the dishes like
Yeah.
multiple times in a row. Again, is that something where you think it's more just my like superior comfort, just like interacting with anyone in any sense?
No, I mean when you're living with someone, I think those shields aren't really up.
Those like an
Like,
unspoken agreement kind
yeah,
of
like
thing.
I'm not like how dare you not do your dishes on a Wednesday like that. No, I'm not like that. But yeah, if it's like, hey, like just did the dishes again, weren't mine, but you know, whatever.
Yeah. So you'll still like you'll poke when poking is necessary.
Yeah, and it's like if you live with three guys and they're all dirty, it's really hard to like say something. But if it's like you live with three guys, two are clean, one is dirty, it's easy to be like, hey, like your dishes are in the sink again.
Well, and especially for guys can just fucking gang up on that one guy, which I
Yeah.
don't know if girls do that either. Girls,
Yeah, I don't know.
for all I know, girls are probably more passive aggressive, but
Yeah, I mean, with the cleanliness thing, the one thing I learned from college till like I stopped having roommates is the real difficult part was I think there was an assumption that like everyone's definition of clean is the same.
oh, definitely.
Like I had a roommate in college, two roommates. One was dirty, one was like super clean. Like he was the kind of guy where we'd be watching football on a Sunday and he'd be like, "Our place is a mess. We need to clean it," and like throw you a broom and he'd be like, "I'll do this later. Like there's a game on."
It was a game.
But those two would clash all the time. And the one thing that always got me was the dirty one would be like, he's like, "Why are you saying it's dirty? Like I'm looking, it's clean." And like, you know, it wasn't spotless by any means, but it was like there was definitely like there's dust on the floor, there's dishes in the sink, like there's I don't know, like empty beer cans. And it's like, oh, like he's being honest. Like
Yep.
this is truly clean to him.
Yep.
And then like that guy specifically, at one point I did go to his parent where he grew up and I was like, yeah.
Ah, hoarders. Got
Yeah, you know,
it.
not that bad, but it was just like, oh, okay, I can understand. Like, if this is what you grew up in, your definition of things is different.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing I think this week that like we're noticing is like oh yeah, it's one pan, we'll do it. Like there's a couple dishes in the sink, we'll wash those. Like,
Yeah,
and it's like oh, it's not washed yet. All right, we'll give it like another day, and then we step up and we do it.
Yeah, and I think I've never lived with just one other roommate, so I think that makes it a lot
That's
easier.
true because then it's much easier to know exactly what's yours and what's the
Yeah,
other
it's either
person's.
yours or it's the other person's.
Yeah.
Whereas when you had two, three roommates, it's always like, well, it's not me, but what's it this person? Like, I don't want to blame him and then find out it was this other person because like
Mm.
he's the dirty one. But if it wasn't him this time, then that screws me up because I can't pick on him for anything else
Yeah.
because he's gonna be like, oh, you just assume it's me when it's not always me. And then, but even just like those thoughts are like like they take energy.
Yeah. And I think and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the other thing is you've seen me out in the wild. I talk to literally every single person that I run into. Whereas here, like obviously we're both working remotely. Like we're working this week. It's not just a vacation. Like pretty much every day. Like I'm either like with the dog or cooking or working or we're working on the YouTube stuff, whatever it is, and we're just kind of like cohabitating.
Yeah,
Like even as an extrovert, like I'm not like I want to say something, but like I know that he doesn't want to talk right now, so that I
yeah,
just like no, it's not like that. So like even if you're introverted and you're worried about rooming with a very extroverted person, it's like it's like that's not going to be the issue. The cohabitation is probably not going to be the issue. Again, assuming that you're buddies and you can
yeah.
have somewhat shared interests and same standards. But you know, if you're an introvert who hates crowds or friends, it's like, yeah, that extroverted person might have some people over sometime. He's probably going to be chit chatting. They might get a little loud. It's like if that bugs you, then you're going to have to figure something out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like we're adults. We're both in our 30s. Like
And that's a difference too. The last time I had roommates, I was like 27.
yeah,
So 27, 32. I think some of the things that maybe you were doing at 27, you're not doing now.
probably. Well, especially since I was living with a girl, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, okay.
That
So
like
if had
it's
you been single at 27.
yeah, I think a lot of my standards would have been pretty different. Even something as simple as just not having as much free time in my day. So knowing I need to get ahead of things so that I don't
Mm,
have to worry about dedicating an hour to cleaning the dishes in my room and making my bed and
yeah.
like
Like one thing I
I
remember
keep the shower cleaner so it doesn't build up with crap anymore.
yeah, so like one thing I remember having roommates was like, "Oh, it's Taco Tuesday, it's Wine Wednesday, it's Thirsty Thursday."
Dude.
And like it was fun, but like if you were just like, I mean, we're only here for 2 weeks, but had we been living together for like a year, and you're like, oh, Taco Tuesday, I'm gonna have like tequila, and like these people are coming over, I'd be like, it's Tuesday, like I can't do this on a Tuesday.
Yeah. So, and nowadays, especially, and by the way, 27, I think both of us probably didn't care as much about our sleep. We probably didn't dedicate as much of our time and our energy to the specifics of our diet and the adherence that we have to our diets.
Yeah,
Um,
that's when I was making adjustments where it was
oh,
like,
me too.
yeah,
I mean, I became a personal trainer at 27, which is when I started to sort of look into more of that stuff with a little bit more specificity. Like, uh, but yeah, nowadays it's also just like we're more mature. So I think there's sort of an agreement as the older you get, the more experience you're going to be interacting with people and interacting with adults that you're just going to be like, all right, one, if you're interviewing roommates, you're going to know what to look for. And two, if you're rooming with your friends for one reason or another, it's going to be pretty easy for you to just look at them and be like, this is how I live. Is that okay with you? It's not like a 22-year-old who's just like, yeah, oh my God, we're besties. Let's move in. Like
yeah.
it's
Actually, another thing we didn't discuss. So like we've both had roommates in the past. When you lived with other guys, was it always friends, or did you ever have to do the Craigslist? Like, all right, let's see how this works.
not Craigslist, but you did have like friends of friends who are. There's my roommate over there hacking up a lung,
Yeah.
I but I did have friends of friends that I'd never met before.
Okay.
And some of those friends of friends were like not even really friends as much as like I know him.
Yeah.
Um, and like one of the places that I lived, I had 6 roommates one year.
Okay.
It was a lot. It
Yeah.
was a big house, but it was 6 roommates, and there were a couple of guys who were So I'll say one of them was a really good friend of mine, like probably going to be in my wedding party when that day comes. Another one was one of his best friends from high school. Another one was one of his best friends from growing up.
Hmm.
I had met both of them somewhat significantly in the past, but then there was another one who just worked with one of them.
Yeah.
Then there was another one that was in the Marine Corps with an old roommate of my friends. And
Yeah.
then there was a seventh who was just like, I'm looking for one. And he kind of knew this new guy. So it was two new guys that barely knew us.
Yeah.
And one of them was really cool. I really, really got along with him, but his lifestyle was so much different than mine. He was just like a total, like, borderline anger management, crazy Marine guy who would just like probably spend like $600 a month on weed and just be
Oh, okay.
high all day. But then me and him bonded over just like crashing on the couch on Sundays and Mondays watching football. So me and him could coexist and it was fine. But then you had the other one, which was just like he was weird. He was in his room. He would come down. He'd be passive aggressive. He would just sort of like when he would come down and cook, it would be like he'd take up a ton of room in the kitchen, and you'd be like, "Hey, can I cook here?" He'd be like, "No, I just need a few more minutes." And then you're like, and then every once in a while you try to talk to him, and you just had nothing to talk about because he wouldn't like go out of his way to connect with you. It was like he was just taking up space in the house.
Yeah.
That's a difficult person to live with because if you're gonna be a tenant, almost as if you're like staying in your own apartment, when really you're coexisting in a house, that makes things really difficult. And then on top of that, you had two other roommates who were full-time chefs who would basically sleep through the day and then they'd be getting back super late at night. And on the worst nights, you'd be upstairs sleeping and you'd hear them come back with like a couple people drunk from the restaurant. And they'd just be hanging out downstairs doing their thing because it was their house too, right?
Yeah.
So I think as it expands out in numbers, you're obviously increasing the risk. But if you can keep it somewhat dialed and you can keep it down to like the circle of trust, so to speak, that's definitely a much more optimal way of dealing with it. Because again, like with me, like I don't have it in me to just be mean to people. Like I can't just be like, dude, don't bring people around here. Like especially people I don't know. Like they're ripping cigs, they're pounding vodka. Like I wake up, there's like shit all over the table. Like I don't have it in me to do that. So I have to be the one who's just like, oh hey, like how's it going, man? Like yo, I'm sure they're like really really good guys, but like I'm trying to sleep and it's tough for me to sleep and like that. And some people, especially in their 20s, are just going to be like, bitch, like
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to this guy. And then you're forced to kind of take yourself out of your comfort zone to confront in a way you're not used to confronting. So it's yeah, it can be tough, especially if you don't have like somewhat of a personal connection, or if those people don't have the willingness to build a personal connection with you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the closest I've never lived with strangers, but the last year I had roommates, it was like a last second thing, and I knew all three roommates, but they didn't know each other. So it was like one was my roommate at the time, currently. The other one was a coworker at the time, and then the other one was a guy I did Brazilian jiu-jitsu with.
Okay.
And I was kind of last minute found this place. It was a 5-bedroom, so we had 4 people. It was kind of a shithole, but it was like it's either this or nothing.
Right.
So the two guys, my current roommate at the time and the guy I knew from jiu-jitsu, they were both stoners. So I was like, oh, they're going to get along great. And then my coworker was an easygoing guy. So I'm like, oh, it's going to work out great. Like 6 months in, I realized my current roommate at the time, he transitioned from, I lived with him for 3 years, and I watched him transition from smoking weed to smoking spliffs, which is weed and
Yes.
tobacco, to smoking spliffs with like a pinch of weed, to just like straight up ripping cigarettes. So he didn't connect with the other guy who was a stoner, who was also kind of dirty. And yeah, like they would, it didn't make sense why they didn't connect, but they just didn't. And then my coworker at the time, he basically like had a girlfriend that he just like slept at her place because our place was so disgusting. Yeah. So like it didn't really work out. And then that's when I was like, all right, like I can now afford to live alone, so I should probably do this.
Yeah, well, and then he's probably coming at you being like, I don't even know why I'm paying for this place. Like I'm always at her place. It's just
no,
like,
he was cool. It was just like he was the other clean one, so it was like, all right, if I clean other people's stuff, he'll also do it, so it was a little easier. And then when he left, it was just like, all right, I'll clean the dishes, I'll cook, I'll clean my dishes, and then I'll like take a shower when I come down. There's more dirty dishes, and
Yeah.
it's like, all right,
Yeah, no, it's a very very strange. It's a strange like thing to balance, but I think we're proof that like introvert extrovert isn't the issue.
no,
Like
not
that
when you're living with
that can come
someone.
because I'm also thinking about you being the one who orchestrates an apartment getting together. Like with me, I would be the one being like all right guys, like let's get on a phone call together, let's talk about this. Like okay, well listen, like he's talking about this, he's doing this, like because you're also thinking about like how do you split up rent? There's smaller rooms, there's like all
Yeah,
this stuff. If you don't just have a bunch of cool people who are like, yeah, it's this much, we'll split it, then you have to just deal with it because then it's like, oh, okay, well, we have six, and the seventh is being an asshole about this stuff. Now we have to figure out how to work this because we're not going to be able to find a seventh, especially if the seventh living there is one of the contingencies of the sixth. Then you're left making
yeah,
it gets so complicated at that point. But like introvert extrovert is not the issue. I just imagine that like you like orchestrating something would be like, yeah, so I need an answer like now. And that would be
yeah.
like the essence of your communication. Whereas I would be like, no, take your time. But like, I'm going to call you in like a
Well,
little
no,
bit.
I
We'll chit
mean,
chat.
I
Like,
was like that, but that's because I was still living in Boston, and this was like July when 90% of places their lease start in September.
that's right. Yeah.
So like it was literally crunch time, and it was one of those things where you were seeing places and you had a checkbook and you had to write a check on the
Right.
spot. And I remember, I won't get too specific, but basically my current roommate at the time, he was going to live in with his girlfriend in a 1 bedroom. Long story short, they broke up. So he had already paid first last security deposit, so he was in the process of getting some of that back. But we were looking for places, and I was like, yeah, like if I have to write a check on the spot, so it's first last security realtor fee. And I was like, hey, so like I kind of need that money like ahead of time for when we write it. He's just like, I don't have it. I was like, listen, like I didn't have it either. I had to take some money from my savings account, whatever. He was a college friend, like similar job, so I knew how much money he
He was
was
good.
making,
Yeah.
and he was just like, no, I don't have it. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like this isn't you don't get like wiggle room here. Like we have to give them money, and if you don't have money, then I can't live with you. Um, and eventually, I think he got it, but it was just like
Yeah.
that mindset. Like I would never.
Yeah.
Like even if I didn't have the money, it would be like me talking to my parents. Hey, I actually need a temporary loan, or
Yep.
you need to figure it out. You can't just be like, yeah, so like I'm not a charity, but you need to treat me like one for a week.
Yeah.
It's like, and again, this is not like can you spot me for dinner? This
Yeah.
is like thousands of dollars.
I need to make my dealer whole. Just I don't have it. Like,
Yeah, I was just like,
it's like what are you
so
talking? What are you talking about, man?
it's like, so you expect me to pay for you? Like
Yeah.
I'm not just gonna give you like a.
Dude, we just figured out how to get Joe Ranieri out of his shell. Just like withhold funds that he desperately needs.
Oh, it's just like I was
He'll,
like
he'll open up and talk to you.
I was just like I don't understand like your reality. Like, well, how do you like? So like I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
But also from a finance perspective, I was like, at this point, we had been working full time for like 3 years,
Yeah.
and I was just like, sure, you might have more student loans than me, but like, really, you don't have this much money to just like if like in a saving. I was like, how do you, like what do you? How much coke do you do? Like,
Yeah.
I just didn't
Yeah,
understand.
it's fun. That's actually another thing about roommates, and again, not quite on the introvert extrovert realm. But I remember there was one time where actually it was when me and my ex broke up, and I really I one, it would have been tough for me to afford the place that we were living by myself.
Yeah,
But two, I just like I just didn't want to be living by myself at that point. I wanted to get a roommate in there to kind of like get me through it, like help me out a little bit,
hmm
and um like you talk about having a roommate that has like a similar financial viability as you, dude. I was with a guy who was very far beneath me in terms of financial capabilities, and I basically had to like cut him a deal where it was like, all right, for me, the value of having him live with me is worth paying a little bit extra.
yeah,
So like basically, I basically allowed him to pay like a little over a third of the rent, and I didn't charge him any utilities. And dude, the moment that you give somebody, dude, I mean the concept and the theory of perceived value.
yeah.
Guess who was the cleaner one? Guess who was the one who was like just I had to handle every single utility, and I had to be the one who was just like, "Did you remember to like turn the lights off, like when you left for the weekend and things like that?" And like, did you, if the TV was on all night, did you just sort of like pass out on the couch and let it run? It's like, because you're not paying for that. Like, it's one of those things where, like, listen, if we're splitting the freaking utilities, like, I'm fine if you like fall asleep with the TV on every once in a while, but like, you're running, it's summer in Boston and you're blasting your AC every single moment of the day, even when you walk out. Um, dude, like, it was one of these things where you're like, are you not even taking into account like the favor that I did for you to help you get into this really nice place? And so that's another one where you got to be a little bit cautious about the lines you're going to draw and the precedents you're going to set.
Yeah.
Um, and again, with me, I think I was a little bit desperate, so I couldn't exactly fully confront him on it. But if you have, dude, if you have someone where you're like giving them like discounts anywhere,
Did you
like,
tell them they were discounts, or were you just like, yeah, I
oh,
think this is fair?
oh no, I told him that I was doing. I said I can help. I can help you help me because he was in a shitty place.
Yeah.
I was like, I can help you help me. Like here's the offer. And he said basically like he's working on margins right now, so like he needs like a little bit more than that. And I was like, all right, well, how about utilities? I'll cover those. But then he just comes in and he lives freely, and it's like I understand that you want to live freely, but there has to be some level of respect in the house that we're living in together. So yeah, roommates is a funny puzzle, man. Like,
Yeah.
and I've never really thought about it like as much as we've been talking about it right now. But yeah, it does come down to just having. I think one, you have to have a level of familiarity with the roommate. Two, you got to have some level of shared interest so that
Hmm.
you're not both stuck being at odds, being like, I need the apartment for this tonight, and you being like, well, I kind of need it for this.
Yeah.
Um, and you probably want to have somewhat similar lifestyle so that they're not pounding sushi and wine and tacos and tequila on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but that the two of you can, appreciate like a good Thursday, Friday night.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to make sure you got that same level of cleanliness. But yeah, extrovert, introvert, it's not an issue. You can cohabitate with either. You just got to make sure that um, you just sort of understand what the expectations are and you can deliver. So,
Yeah.
but I think having more of these conversations about like introvert, extrovert in different layers of life is kind of a good thing that we can do because we can talk about it with dating, we can talk
Hmm.
about it with family, we can talk about it with careers, whatever it might be. But I imagine that we're gonna unlock a few
Yeah.
things as we keep going forward.
Yeah. I guess we'll see.
Yep.